to The Dirt on Organic Farming, a podcast from OATS, the Organic Agronomy Training Service. This season, we are answering all those burning questions we know you have about crop insurance for organic farmers. Yes, we know it's a podcast about crop insurance, but we're going to keep these episodes short, lively, and accessible. Heck, you might even enjoy listening. I'm Nate Powell-Palm.
And I'm Mallory Krieger.
And we're the hosts of The Dirt on Organic Farming.
In this episode, what can I do to improve crop insurance for organic farmers? In the last few episodes, we have been talking about some of the issues organic farmers face when it comes to procuring and utilizing crop insurance. So I'm really excited about this episode where we are going to speak with some of the people who are doing the work on these issues and advocating for improvements to crop insurance.
And I am stoked as well. I know there are some really incredible efforts happening to share the organic farmer's perspective on crop insurance with state and federal agencies to hopefully drive changes that could be really beneficial for organic farmers. And as an organic farmer myself, that has spent a lot of time on crop insurance, I am so dang grateful and excited to learn more.
So today we're going to talk to Julia Barton and Eli Dean, who have worked together pretty extensively advocating for changes to crop insurance. So first, let's hear from Julia.
I'm Julia Barton. I work for the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, which serves growers in a 12-state region in the realms of certification, organic certification, education, and policy. I'm an organic policy specialist for OFA, and I also serve transitioning and organic producers as part of our sustainable agriculture educator team.
I asked Julia who she thinks crop insurance does not currently work for.
Sure. So right now, insurance works really well for some operators, but it does not work well for everyone. Transitioning and organic growers, diversified operators, and small scale producers are some of the stakeholders who are not currently being served well, or certainly as well as others by the existing crop insurance system. So OFA producers have an organized crop insurance work group in which they have identified several issues that need to be addressed in order to make crop insurance more fair, functional, and informed.
Julia provided a pretty comprehensive explanation of how they identify the most pressing issues and then think about how to take action.
So at OFA, we use a model of organization to make sure that farmers' voices are the voices that are being heard in advocacy, and that begins with working groups. So we think it's important to organize and to talk with one another about what the issues are first, and then form those issues into specific requests, and then run those requests through various ways of getting change made. We also think it's important to organize with other groups that are organized around these issues, right? It's so much easier to get together on our asks when we're all talking to each other. So if folks have a group in their area that's already working on these issues, great. If not, forming a work group is really easy. We meet monthly on Zoom for an hour, and we get a lot done in that period of time. It does take a little bit of back end work to organize the thoughts that come out of it and run it back by the group, but it's really, making sure that those ideas are from farmers, by farmers, for farmers, and then organizing them into a platform that can be utilized through various channels. We've also been thinking about other ways to educate stakeholders and the public about these issues. So we have a really wonderful intern who's putting together a crop insurance mashup video about people's experiences with crop insurance. She gathered 12 interviews at our OFA conference last weekend alone, and we'll be Zooming with more participants because sometimes you say the words crop insurance and people's eyes begin to glaze over, but this is a structural system, in our nation, which is built on the backs of taxpayers and which is designed to support certain types of agriculture and certain types of farming. And we really want to make sure that it's a more fair, functional, and informed process for serving the growers that OFA serves moving forward.
I love the emphasis on from farmers, for farmers. I'm sure that compiling all that feedback from these different groups is a major effort, but it's also great that all of these farmer voices are really being accounted for. I'd love to hear about some of the issues that rose to the top that OFA is working on.
So, one example is what qualifies as good farming practices. We talked about good farming practices in a previous episode, but essentially it means that the farmer is taking care of their crops to the best of their ability. As you can imagine, not having an exact definition can be a problem, especially since it means different things to different federal agencies.
So, in terms of good farming practices, I know there's a good farming practice determination standards handbook by the Risk Management Agency. It's about 65 pages, which no one that I know has ever read cover to cover. I also know there's a separate set of good farming practices for the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And that sort of double standard is just really problematic for growers. I know some of our operators have engaged in practices that have been challenged in terms of whether or not they are considered to be good farming practices. And we have had to go to bat in terms of serving as an expert witness in the mediation process that ensued thereafter. We would like to see good farming practices be a consistent definition for both the Natural Resource Conservation Service and the Risk Management Agency. That tends to be our refrain, regardless of what the definition is. We have a similar issue with the definition of a beginning farmer, which doesn't match in different agencies. We'd also like to see a definition that honors organic producers' commitment to organic production, and so that operators are not forced to choose between risk management strategies and adherence to their organic system plans. In all, we need more consistency in communication among various USDA and RMA agencies.
Julia gave an example of a time when this tension between the USDA and RMA about the definition of good farming practices came into play.
I think the challenge is that the situation that our farmer was in was a very typical situation for an organic grower. He was using a very typical rotation. It was corn, beans, wheat, clover, back into corn rotation. And there was a challenge with the termination of the clover and a misunderstanding of the rotation, which has been around for a very long time and very well used by organic growers. So we just, did our best to educate through the mediation process about that rotation, about why it's used. We used a lot of SARE publications to support his actions as good farming practices. And ultimately, the decision was reversed. But it's unfortunate because he had a lot of stress in that situation and had a lot of economic hardship while he was waiting for his claim, and also having kind of his management practices questioned was really stressful for him. So I know we're not necessarily quantifying emotional stress in this situation, but I think it definitely plays into the equation, especially at a time when farmer mental health is really being brought to light. So if your safety net doesn't work for you, then your stress is magnified.
That is incredibly tough. When you're doing what you know to be best for the organic management on your farm, but as Julia said, you don't feel like you have a safety net.
Yeah, it really is difficult for farmers. Another issue that OFA is addressing is tea yields, which we spoke about in the last episode.
This is the topic of our next work group session, is brainstorming solutions to this problem, because we've learned when working with the various federal agencies, they appreciate very specific pathways forward in suggestion form for their consideration. So we will be think tanking this as a group and coming up with a suggested way forward, because right now we have counties where the operator we're working with is the only organic operator in the county. And the numbers that they're being presented with in T year 0 or T year 1 are just laughable. And they're asking me, like, where are they getting these numbers? Like, where is this even coming from, right?
A quick point of clarification. T year 0 refers to the start of the 3-year organic transition, and T year 1 refers to year 1 of transition. Now back to Julia.
This is complicated by the fact that the Risk Management Agency is asking transitional operators to have an organic system plan in the first year of transition, which our group thinks is a really ridiculous ask, and that folks in that first year of transition are not actually ready to write an organic system plan, but do need the support and educational opportunities to support them during transition. So we'd like to see RMA walk back that requirement and then come up with an actual functional way to do risk management, because that's what RMA is here to do, not to be a certifier, not to be reviewing organic system plans, but to provide a farm safety net for operators who are engaging in that transition. And we're talking about, risk management, right? So people sleeping at night. And so you really want to have your best option that you can find for that service. We would really like to see a more informed risk management agency and more informed crop insurance agents on the ground when it comes to organic. And that is one of the pieces of the platform that the OFA growers have put together. We also want to see that same commitment to organic and transitioning producers, the crop insurance level on the ground, because that can make or break the experience of the operator.
I think more information is always a good thing, whether it be for RMA or crop insurance agents or farmers. So, any opportunity to share knowledge and experiences between those groups, I think would just improve outcomes for absolutely everyone.
I completely agree. So, next, I called Eli Dean, who is a farmer and who, as I mentioned, works with Julia on some of OFA's advocacy work.
I am Eli Dean. I am a fourth generation family farm owner and operator in north central Ohio. We have about 750 acres of certified organic row crops. So we do use crop insurance for our corn and our soybeans and occasionally for our wheat.
So, we've heard some thoughts from Julie on this, but I am curious about what Eli's perspective is on the biggest issues facing organic farmers when it comes to crop insurance.
Yes, I spoke to Eli about that, and he addressed some of the same issues as well as a few new ones.
Overall, the biggest challenges for producers probably center around the transition period and the way that crop insurance doesn't serve transitioning producers very well. But then once a producer is certified organic, one of the biggest issues is probably planting date and the date that RMA crop insurance wants you to have your crops in the ground. Regardless of what the infield conditions are, they look at the date on the calendar.
Okay, so I know we discussed some of these issues with tea yields with Julia, but I'm curious about planting date issues.
Yes, Eli explained what planting dates are and why they're an issue for organic farmers.
So the final planting date for crop insurance is the date that RMA, that's the risk management agency, says that your region, you should be done planting a certain crop by. So, for example, for corn, we are supposed to be done planting by June 5th. And for each day you are past that, up to, I think, 15 days past, you can still plant, but the amount that they will insure is reduced by 1% per day. And that is very frequently a challenge for organic producers for a couple of reasons. First off, organic producers rely heavily on cover crops, and those cover crops can be difficult to incorporate and to manage ahead of a cash crop like corn. And then, secondly, organic producers tend to try very hard to not be on ground when it is unfit, primarily when it's too wet. And so when you combine those two things, that tends to push our planting date later. We also do get the added benefit of planting later, of having faster and better emergence, which is very, very helpful for weed control. So for multiple reasons, we plant later. And we have consistently been planting later, but RMA does not consider that in the setting of our future planting date, which is only based on the conventional our conventional neighbors and the data they have for conventional producers in our area.
Eli also had some suggestions for how he would want to see planting dates changed.
I think either having that final planting date moved back by a week or 10 days could be helpful, or alternatively, if RMA could just have an option to where we ask them to look at our historic planting date on our farm and give us some sort of a personal variance that says, oh, you've been planting by on the 10th of June for the past 5 years. That is now your final planting date for your farm. I think would be very helpful and very reasonable.
As someone who raises organic cover crops, and I have worked with so many farmers who are big into organic cover crops, more flexibility with planting dates is something that could be useful to different farmers.
Yeah, Eli also mentioned some of the research on the benefits of leaving cover crops in the field for longer in some areas of the country.
There has been a lot of research about cover crops in the recent years, and pretty much all of that research says that the longer you can leave a cover crop in the field, the more benefit you will receive from it. And it is a very nonlinear in the amount of biomass you can get. And also, talking about a legume like clover or alfalfa, you can get a lot more nitrogen credits if you can leave your cover crop in the field longer. So it really makes sense for RMA to acknowledge, if not incentivize people to leave their cover crops growing longer, which is not the way that it is right now.
So we know some of the issues Eli is focused on, but I'd love to hear more about how he's addressing them.
Eli shared some of the ways he approaches crop insurance advocacy.
Recently, I just wrote this one-page letter to RMA asking if we can address the plant date issue of organic producers. And I think those letters, those collective letters, are one simple way that we can all get involved in asking for improvements on organic crop insurance. And then more broadly, working with an organization like OFA that does policy advocacy work. This is a farm bill year, and there are a lot of potential changes being thrown around about how to make the process work better for everybody. And having somebody like OFA that is hosting these work group sessions, listening to growers, and then taking those messages and putting them in front of people that have the ability to make improvements, I think is very important.
He also recently went to Washington with OFA to share some of his ideas for improving crop insurance.
Yeah, it was really great to be able to be hosted by OFA to go to DC and to the National Sustainable Ag Coalition meeting, because I don't really have the time to be setting up all of the meetings and the everything it takes to attend DC, especially when it comes to setting up all of the meetings with our federal representatives. So it was really great to be able to take the thoughts and ideas of all of the farmers that I'm friends with, that I work with, and to go and talk about them both with the folks at NSAC who are working on these topics all the time, and then also to talk with the federal representatives who are the ones that are actually going to be crafting the language and voting on these improvements and changes to crop insurance.
I am so glad to hear that folks like Eli are speaking directly to the decision makers who manage and improve these programs. Farmers are the best advocates for policy change, and I know from personal experience that agency staff, senators, congressmen, and cabinet officials love hearing directly from the folks with boots on the ground. It can be tough thinking about policy, especially as an organic farmer, and feeling like it wasn't really written to adequately support you.
It is so important. And it's thanks to advocacy organizations like OFA, the Organic Trade Association, INSAC, the Organic Farmers Association, the National Organic Coalition, and many others that farmers have these opportunities. If you want to learn more about these organizations and the work that they do, check it out in the show notes.
Eli is so plugged in into the ways to improve crop insurance for organic farmers, and I am wondering, does he have any advice for organic farmers on what to look for in that excellent crop insurance agent?
He did indeed.
Communication is extremely important. And in fact, I just got a text message from my crop insurance agent while we were on the call here about the cover crop incentive program. And just having that open and frequent communication is very important. And I really appreciate from my crop insurance agent that I ask questions, and if he doesn't know the answer, he says, I don't know. Nobody's asked me that. And then he goes and he finds the answer. So we are in very, very frequent communication with our agent.
Something Eli mentioned is that he would really love to see more education and resources available to crop insurance agents so that they can better support organic farmers.
I think that one of the biggest issues is agent education and how difficult it is to find a crop insurance agent that is not only knowledgeable about organic, but is willing to go and find those answers for the inevitable questions that come up. So if a producer is considering getting organic crop insurance, they need to make sure they're asking the right questions of the agents and of anybody else that they're working with, because there are differences between organic and conventional crop insurance, and they need to either find somebody that knows those differences, or at the very least find somebody that knows what questions to ask and who to ask them to.
This has been The Dirt on Organic Farming, a podcast by the Organic Agronomy Training Service. OATS provides training to agronomists, advisors, and crop consultants so that farmers will have better access to reliable, science-based advice for their unique farm operation. Special thanks in this episode goes to Julia Barton and Eli Dean. This episode was produced by Michaela Elias. For more information, go to www.organicagronomy.org. OATS is a programmatically independent consortium that is fiscally sponsored by the Organic Trade Association. OATS is supported in part with funding from OTA's membership companies. Season 2 of The Dirt on Organic Farming is made possible by a funding partnership with USDA Risk Management Agency under award number RMA 22CPT00123993. I'm Mallory Krieger.
And I'm Nate Powell-Palm.
Till next time, thanks for listening.